take a look at a combination of two topics, because one of the things we often do is we look at a topic in isolation. And the two topics I want to look at, which get discussed a lot, are when to uncover a crop and how to control mold. So there's always connections between different stages and different components of a production system. And so I'm going to talk about those in the context of sunflower shoots. So I've had some trouble with mold with my current soil and seed mix. My last batch was a complete disaster. And this is a batch I've just started. And I did take a look the other day and I did see some mold. So I've given this 3 light, or actually 2 fairly heavy and 1 light spraying of hydrogen peroxide. And my approach there was I identified mold, I uncovered it, I gave it a good spray, and then I let it sit for a while so it could continue to air out, and then I covered it back up again. Hi, Norway. I uncovered it again. I saw there was still a bit of mold there, so I sprayed it again. And then the third time there was a little less mold, but it was still there, so I did a third spray. So one thing I decided I didn't want to do with this crop is I didn't want to lose it, having lost a few crops to mold. I don't want to have to uncover and spray every lot. That's just not doable, and I don't think it's practical. So I wanted to uncover and spray. I wanted to get this lot going. So this brings up so this is how I'm controlling mold. As we've talked about numerous times, not overwatering, good airflow, good cleaning of seeds are all really important for controlling mold. So even though I couldn't do that, I controlled it with chemical means, and so I've still got a crop and it's looking pretty good. So the second thing is, I know the best way to get airflow into a crop is to uncover it. And so what I want to do is I want to uncover this crop as early as I can without compromising the advantage you get of covering a crop. And if you remember, the covering helps germination by keeping seed in really good contact with the soil. It keeps the light out to delay photosynthesis. The pressure gives you a stronger stalk. So there's many benefits, as I'm sure many of you know already. And so I'm always thinking about when can I uncover? And even though there's an optimum time, I also want to know what my sort of earliest time is. And this is my earliest time here. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of a view. So as soon as I can see a little bit of lifting from the shoots below, this to me is an okay time to uncover. It's not ideal, but it's okay. So let's take a look at this so you can see what a crop should look like as we go. So I'm going to uncover this. As you can see, I don't think we see any mold on here. I don't see any, but maybe a little bit, but I'm going to show you symptoms of mold here. So here I've got a root sticking out and this browning on here. I know this was a moldy spot. I think I can see it in a few other spots. So that is how the mold persists, is it's done damage to the root and then you don't get recovery. You can see a little bit of mold here. I'll give this one more light spray with hydrogen peroxide, but then I'll leave it. So what am I looking at here? So there's a couple things that I need to see in order to uncover a crop of sunnies. Number one is that the crop is actually rooted into the ground. So you can see here, for example, this has clearly put a root down and it's stable enough that it's been able to push the seed up. So if you remember, it's the seed that comes up and then opens up, right? And so it has to be rooted into the soil in order to do that. And you can see some are better than others. This isn't a particularly good one, even though it's up. And then we see in some cases some roots that are sort of off to the side and whatnot. So overall, I'm looking for rooting, a little bit of growth, and enough pushing of the tray that I know I've gotten some benefit there. So this isn't going to be a perfect crop. It's probably going to be a little leggy. My yield may be a little low. But the thing is, I'm going to get a yield, and this is the most important part. I haven't wasted my time, my soil, and my seeds here. The other thing is, so I've uncovered this now in order to do this video, but ideally I would uncover this at night. And so if you think about that, it means it's at least staying in the dark a little bit longer. I could take this tray, as I've talked about before, and cover it and keep it in the dark a little longer. And if you're wondering why I want to do that, you actually don't want a crop to photosynthesize for too long. I'm always timing my harvest to basically be at the point when it's at the right size and it's really just turned the shade of green I like it. Excessive photosynthesis is going to make your crop more bitter, and it's going to progress the crop a lot faster, which means you're more likely to get hairiness or true leaves or something like that. So we're always looking for the minimum amount of light to get the maximum amount of photosynthesis, so your crop is greened up just at harvest time. So this will be an okay crop. It's just for me. Doesn't matter. It'll be an edible crop. But yeah, so again, what I'm looking at is combining topics here. So one is when to uncover, and two is how you control mold issues. So as we talked about, I'm uncovering early here to control mold, but I still wanted to make sure that my stuff was covered for long enough. So hopefully that gives you some insights in. Let's see if we can get this back to where we were. Okay, good. So just a little note. This is why you always make sure your phone is fully charged before doing a spontaneous video here. So hopefully a few of you had a chance to join again. There were some chat questions there, it looked like. I'm going to see if I can pull them up here and see if there's, oh, hey, I can, yes, good. Hi, Northern Ireland. Weather is great here. Really good, actually, if you want to take a look. So the reason I want to continue this post is with a couple other things on this topic. So first of all I'm uncovered, I'm ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to do, it's going to be my last time, I'm going to give it another spray with hydrogen peroxide. Just to really, I never want to overdo it, but I just want to make sure I don't get mold again. So I've got my spray bottle here, going to give it a spray. You can see I'm being quite generous because I want to make sure it's effective and getting into lots of little spots. And there we go. So a question you might be having maybe in the back of your head is, where's that finger coming from? There it is. Sourcing hydrogen peroxide and what kind of hydrogen peroxide to use. People are often asking about food grade and different concentrations and stuff like that. So I'm going to give you an easy way, which is a little more expensive, but actually still quite effective at a small scale. So if you are at a bigger scale, you can buy hydrogen peroxide in about a 30% concentration, which means you can dilute it down about 10-to-1 into a 3% concentration in order to sanitize things. And this is what hydrogen peroxide would often be at if you were to buy it at a pharmacy or something. So what I have bought recently for more my laundry and cleaning is what they market as oxygen bleach. So this is a hydrogen peroxide with no added colors or added scents or anything like that, just straight hydrogen peroxide with a fancy name and a nice label. And I just recently emailed them and asked what the concentration was because it wasn't on the package. And they came back that it's in the 4 to 6% range. So at 4 to 6%, I can kind of use that, but it might be a little strong. And the reason it might be a little strong is these are very vulnerable in the sense that they're still growing. There's a lot of cell division. And hydrogen peroxide, if you use too much of it, it'll actually start to destroy new cells. So you want to be careful about that. So what I did is I put a little bit into a spray bottle, and then I added a little bit of water to dilute it just a bit. And I know I'm getting effectiveness, because as I kneel down to listen to it, I can hear it sizzling. And you know that sort of foamy sound you get when you've got hydrogen peroxide going. So the other thing I'm looking at now is I've uncovered, and one of my rules of thumb in general is to water something as soon as it's uncovered. This is because it may have spent 3 or 4 days without having any water. Now, even though there's moisture trapped in the soil and moving water are very different things. And the moving water seems to do a really good job of stimulating growth. So I always sort of lift my tray first to get a sense of how much water is in there. And I actually feel there's quite a decent amount in there, but I'm just going to give it a tiny little bit. So the way I like to water on my home scale is I have this nice little nozzle that I can put on top of a 2-liter pop bottle. And that way I can kind of get a nice sort of stream going. And this is just a light watering, but it's all I need. I got a little bit of leakage there, but I just want to get a little bit in there. I'm kind of rinsing off the hydrogen peroxide, kind of giving things a clean, and just getting a little bit more water in there so there's some water movement. So it's really light and it's really easy, and if I wasn't holding a phone with one hand, it would have been much more graceful as well. And so that makes it really easy to to water without getting water all over the place and without pulling this out and doing a bottom watering. So these are all things that I'm still keeping in mind the mold we've had, and I'll post some more videos so you can see how this crop does, having been uncovered this early. I don't imagine others uncover crops this early, and if you do, it's okay, but I would like these a little taller, and probably just another day would have been pretty good. Star sand. So I'm not familiar with star sand, so check the ingredient list. I, in the past, had used a brand called Aseptox, which was basically a powdered form of hydrogen peroxide used in brewing. And Aseptox was actually sold as a cleaner and not a sanitizer. The reason being is that as a sanitizer, it has to meet certain requirements legally. Theirs didn't meet those requirements, but it was very inexpensive, and it was quite effective because a lot of brewers were using it to sanitize their equipment. And as you know, if you're not sanitizing things properly, things will go wrong. So that's a really good indicator that it's an effective sanitizer. So yeah, check your ingredients, and also double check to make sure there's no additives or anything else, because there might be something in there that you just generally don't want to be putting directly on your crop. Now, as a reminder, there are guidelines for the use of bleach directly on food crops. And there are dilution recommendations for that as well. If I get the chance, I'll actually post the document I got from Clorox, which gives you different recommendations. So yeah, there are basically guidelines for using sodium hypochlorite directly on food. It's a little, I know it's what a lot of people don't do, but it's also an option. It's very effective. It can be diluted down quite a lot, and it's very inexpensive. So it is an option if you can't find a hydrogen peroxide base. But yeah, more and more, I think we're going to see less and less of that around food, which is very encouraging. So I think that's all I'm going to cover there. As I said, I'll try to find the bleach recommendation documents if that's something if you're curious about. And with hydrogen peroxide, we used probably about a 2 to 3% solution to control the mold on here, which seemed to do a pretty good idea or job. Now let's just see how well this crop does in a few days and what it looks like at yield time. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you found that useful, and we'll have some more stuff coming for you soon.